They were Marquette. He was a Jesuit missionary priest, and Joliet, a French explorer. The French government sent them into this area. They asked them to try to link together two existing North American water routes. Europeans had already traveled down the St. Lawrence Seaway in Canada, arrived right over here at the Great Lakes. Other Europeans had gone to the Mississippi River and followed that down to its end in the Gulf of Mexico. But in 1673, if you needed to go all the way from one of these to the other, you had to pick up your canoe and carry it yourself over land. This was called portage. And it not only, I imagine, was pretty incredibly exhausting, it's also really, really slow. And so Marquette and Joliet, they came into this area trying to find a faster way for people to travel through it. Well, luckily, they got a tip from a friendly Potawatomi guide about another swamp. This one's just southwest of downtown. This swamp links up with the Des Plaines River, which a little farther west of here links up to the Illinois River. If you follow the Illinois River a little farther west, you can link up with the Mississippi River. And so the quote-unquote discovery of that swamp, Marquette and Joliet, they were able to go across the entire continent by water. They established a trade route through this area. And so this beautiful city of Chicago, this came about because it was located along the banks of that newly established route for trade here in North America. Well, of course, anytime you have a big group of people all starting to live in the same area, you have some of the problems of urbanization of modern cities that come up. And not the least of these is what you do with all of your populations, trash and sewage. There were no modern sewer systems in North America until 1900 and later. So when this area was all first being settled, people would throw all of their trash and their sewage directly into the Chicago River, which at that time, this river flowed out behind us into Lake Michigan, which, like it still is right now, it's the city's source of drinking water. So, they were polluting their own drinking water. This started to lead to a lot of health epidemics, cholera, typhus. So some engineers set out to try and solve this public health problem. And the really unusual solution that they came up with was to reverse the direction of the main branch of this river. They did this. They dredged this riverbed to change the angle on it so the water would flow from higher to lower ground. They also dug a big canal. It's southwest of the city. We can't see it. It's called the Illinois Sanitary and Ship Canal. It helps to control the water flow. And so right now, tonight, you're traveling on this river in the opposite direction from the way that nature intended for this to flow. You can see this fountain splashing down over here to the right. This is Centennial Fountain. This was put here to commemorate the 100-year anniversary of this historic engineering feat of a successful reversal of the main branch of the river. They completed this project here downtown in 1900. We'll come across your first building today, though. Since you're on an architectural trip, it's also right over here on our right side. You'll see this building. It has rounded corners on the east side that we're approaching. This is the Sheraton Hotel and Towers. This will be your first brush with an architectural style we'll see a lot along the river tonight called postmodernism. One of the main things that postmodernist architects attempted to do was to reference history or older ideas within their designs. So the Sheraton with these rounded corners, this is honoring a much older Chicago building, the Carson Peary Scott department store downtown on State Street, which was designed by Louis Sullivan. Sullivan's a really famous architect from this area. He was one of the founders of the Chicago school style of architectural design. You see all the little greenish panes of glass and windows of that. This organic shade, you'll see this, it gets repeated in a lot of the buildings that are built along the Chicago River. You've got a skyscraper waiting for you just beyond this next bridge. You'll see a building, it has all these black glass recessed windows that shoot up into the sky in lines. This is the NBC Tower, home to NBC's networks here downtown, designed by Adrian Smith from Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. That's a firm name that you'll hear a lot on any Chicago architectural trip. If you look about 3/4 the way up on this building, you can see all these spans with the space in between. This is a modern streamlined take on a Gothic load-bearing arch called a flying buttress. We'll see some deceptively more traditional-looking ones just down the street here in a minute. That building may remind you of Rockefeller Center from Manhattan. It has pretty much an identical external silhouette to the design. There's a really historic Chicago building coming up. This one's also on our right, but it's set back a little ways. It's made of Indiana limestone, and you'll see it has all these Gothic details up toward the top. This is the Chicago Tribune, home to the Tribune's newspaper offices here downtown. This was the winning entry in a design competition sponsored by its publisher, Kurt McCormick, in the early 1920s. He chose that design from a New York firm, Howells and Hood. If you look up toward the top of the Tribune, you can see it appears to be a more traditional-looking set of those flying buttresses, except that those were cast out of concrete, which was a brand new building technology toward the beginning of the last century, when this building was built along Michigan Avenue. Just across the street, you'll see next the beautiful white terracotta facade on the Wrigley building. This was built with the money from the Wrigley chewing gum family empire. It's based on Spanish Renaissance architecture. If you notice the clock tower way up here, if you want to crane your neck and look extra closely at the face, and you can see that those aren't numbers, they're W's up there sort of squished together really secretly for the last name Wrigley. It's a fun little hidden detail to look for downtown. A newer skyscraper in Chicago is next right over here to our right. If you've wondered where Donald Trump built his first Chicago building, this is it. They completed the height of 92 stories on this in September of 2009, so it'll be 2 years old, completed this year. Designed by Adrian Smith when he was working for Skidmore, Owings & Merrill. If you wonder what's in here, there's a hotel, offices, a restaurant, a bar, condominium, so it's really mixed use. All kinds of different things going on in what is now the second tallest building in Chicago. There's a big black glass and steel box coming up next, the IBM building. This was designed by a German expatriate architect, Ludwig Mies van der Rohe. Mies van der Rohe left Germany just before World War II began, and luckily for Chicago, he came here. Sometimes we call him the father of modernism, and one of the ideas behind that style that you may have heard before is the saying, less is more. Mies van der Rohe, he once said that God was in the details. And so you can kind of see he doesn't feel the need to decorate the outside of this. He thought that the physics of a building structure, that this was, ornamentation enough. Just beyond the IBM building, next you'll get to see almost its complete visual opposite. There are these two sort of wild and crazy looking curvy towers, Marina City, designed by Bertrand Goldberg. And Goldberg studied under Mies van der Rohe, so he saw the teacher's idea. Here's one of his students right next to it. Well, Goldberg, he rejected this box-like modernist architectural style. He said once that boxes were psychological slums. So he was really concerned with how his design would affect whoever had to live or work inside it. You can see if you live here, you can dock your boat, eat in a restaurant, park your car. Then you can go bowling, come give us a fashion show on the bridge. And then if you're not too tired out after a little while, you can go hear a concert at the Bossa Blues. You can kind of see the tip of the blue to the right. That music club is down in the basement. So you can do all of those different things without ever leaving those two big buildings downtown. Well, since Chicago, the city sprung up because it was located along a trade route. You might expect to find a lot of warehouses along this once really functional body of water. And we're approaching a classic red brick Chicago River warehouse. It's just up to the right of this next bridge. This is the Reed Murdoch building, built in 1913 by George Nimitz. You can kind of tell right where the water taxi sign is painted. There would have been a dock originally where you could have pulled your boat up to load goods onto it to ship out to the rest of the country. If you look up, notice all the little geometric design detailing that he put on the structure. He's referencing Frank Lloyd Wright's Prairie School of Architecture, which took a lot of its design inspiration from Native American tribes that were here in this area, years and years ago. There's a building coming up also on our right. It pretty conveniently says the Chicago School about half the way up. This is a great postmodern take on Sullivan Chicago School style. Sullivan thought that buildings should look more human. And so you can see this has feet, a shaft like a body. Way up at the top there's a round structure like the head on a person. This round room way up here, it's a boardroom where CEOs meet. But these architects are trying to make that look like the bow or the front of a boat. And so they're referencing the river. you'll see next